Hello, Anna.
Hi.
What were your main ideas behind the piece?
Well, I look a lot at the relationship between shamanic practice and writing in my work. That's a big theme for me. And over the last couple of years, I've been looking at darkness and spending time in the dark as both a shamanic tool of initiation and as a inspiration for writing practice, or as a method for writing practice. So I've spent the last 12 hours in this box, blindfolded, writing, and it was filmed from above and projected back onto the sides of the box, so it was quite layered in its presentation. So sometimes I looked quite silhouetted from the outside, and sometimes on the projections you kind of felt more like you were in the box with me. And I guess the piece is about the role of the writer and the role of the audience as well, and that relationship. But also just continuing from my own research for my dissertation on writing as a process, rather than just having finished works, having writings as processing.
Yeah, cool. How was it? How was the experience for you?
The experience was amazing for me. I've done a lot of work in the dark before, and spent long periods of time in the dark, but I've never written for such a long amount of time, and I've never done it as a performance either. In fact, I realised a few days before this performance that I've never actually done a performance at Dartington.
Wow.
My work tends to be more written or digital. I've never stepped into the role of a performer, so it was a really interesting experience for me. And also because I work with shamanic practice quite a lot, it was really interesting and quite vulnerable for me to be experiencing that kind of liminal place, but in such a public way. But it was very enjoyable and very strange. There were times when I didn't feel like I was in the box at all. I felt like I was in different places, and places that I'd been. And there were times when I felt like I could see, even though I was blindfolded.
Oh, wow.
And really interesting, like, the interactions with people that came into the space, and different energies that came into the room. Nice.
Were you able to notice what it was that created those, each of those feelings that you said that you had? You're saying, like, sometimes you felt like you were going to different places. Do you know what it was that led you into that, or what was the kind of energy of that?
I think I think when you're doing any kind of repetitive act for a long time, it sends you into kind of like a trance sort of state, and like a state that in shamanism you'd use for journeying, which is, about going to different places, but also just being in the dark specifically. If you're in the dark for more than 20 minutes, then you start to release a chemical in your brain, which is responsible for dreaming.
Oh, right.
So it becomes quite difficult to tell if you're dreaming or if you're awake
Oh,
or
wow.
asleep. And I guess, when I say I feel like I was in different places, it would be quite sudden. Like I'd suddenly, I went to Mexico last year, and I really specifically suddenly felt like I was sat under this tree that I worked a lot with in Mexico.
Wow.
A lot of mountaintop activity actually. Like I really had these kind of images of really vast spaces, which is interesting because this space is very small. And also when I took the blindfolds off, I was really surprised at how small the space actually was, because in the dark it seemed huge.
Yeah. Wow. And what were your expectations with regard to like outside stimulus, and was it distracting, and how did it influence your experience, and also what was produced when you were working in the box?
Yeah, it was interesting because it's a very different way of doing this kind of work from what I'm used to, because shamanic practice is quite a personal thing, so I'm not used to having loads of people around, and it is quite distracting because you're constantly brought back to this space here when there's other people here.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that quite difficult, but it also opened up a new way of working for me, really, because particularly a lot of the people that I know had quite a playful interaction
Mm-hmm.
with me, making noises and sounds and percussive noises, and following where I was writing on the other side of the canvas, and
Mm-hmm.
And it had a really interesting effect on the piece because it became much more collaborative, and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, added something to it that I don't think would have happened without that at all, actually.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it sounds like it was a positive experience having that, but I mean, is there any part of you that feels like it was kind of taking you out of the kind of meditative state that potentially you could be in if you spent so much time alone?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it does, but also I found it very interesting, and I would like to do more work that explores doing it in both ways. I'd like to do more work just on my own, but I would really like to do more work collaboratively, maybe with other people in the box too.
Yeah, wow. Both blindfolded?
Yeah, which
Wow.
was an idea that I was kind of playing with a while ago, but I kind of found it way too complicated. But I really see that it adds a kind of playfulness to it that, if you're on your own, you can get quite serious.
Yeah.
And so I'd definitely like to experiment more.
So what are your overall kind of like feelings about the success of your project, what it was that you felt worked and what you expected and what you didn't, and where you want to take it now?
I'm really happy with this performance. I kind of didn't expect it to work. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just my kind of negative way of thinking of my own work, and even when I was doing it, I constantly felt like there were these huge white spaces and that the space was never going to get filled, and I was really conscious of how it looked because I couldn't see what I was doing. I thought it looked rubbish, and then when I took my blindfold off, I was like, wow, it looks kind of crazy.
It looks amazing. It looks like a very intense piece of artwork.
Yeah, so I'm
really intense.
I'm really happy with it, and really surprised actually, and it's really inspired me to want to try this out in different ways. I really liked being able to make music. Well, I really liked it when people were doing percussive things and I started joining in, making noise, and I think I'd really like to do it again and get like contact mics on the canvas, so
Oh yeah, that would be a good idea.
make lots of noise
Mm.
and kind of jam with it a bit more. I think that's something that came into the piece, but it wasn't really planned, and I think that's really where I want to take it.
Well, that's great because you weren't expecting that at all, and it's taken it in a new direction. Great. Anything else you want to talk about?
I think I just want to go to bed actually.
Yeah, fair enough. Cool. Thanks,
Thank
Laura.
you.
Thanks. Bye.